A couple of years ago, we were arguing over every penny in the United States budget, and it was quite clear we didn't have enough money to go around. Well, somebody asked me where we came up with $2 trillion in the course of the last 6 months. Did we wish for it out of the air? Have people gone mad in this country? You don't have that money. We are claiming that a bankrupt government can save a bankrupt banking system. Explain to me how that happens, because I think that's impossible. And the fact that we have just elected an individual who may or may not be qualified, and he presents silly ideas like this and says, let's move forward now, and we're all acting like the laws of economics have been repealed, and we can actually afford to foot the bill with money nobody's got. This is insane. It's got to lead to the collapse of our economy, and it's going to.
We are no longer a Christian nation.
We do not consider ourselves a Christian nation.
The United States has been enriched by Muslim Americans. Since our founding, American Muslims have enriched the United States. Islam has always been a part of America's story. There is a mosque in every state in our union, and over 1,200 mosques within our borders.
You know, one of the points I want to make is that if you actually took the number of Muslims Americans, you know, we'd be one of the largest Muslim countries in the world.
Let there be no doubt, Islam is a part of America.
The United States of America is the most powerful nation on earth. In itself, this goes a long way to explaining the things it does around the world. At present, it's conducting a war on terror, or more accurately, a campaign against opposition to US domination. Others prefer to call it the beginnings of the Third World War. The United States has an insatiable appetite for conflict, and since going into Korea in the 1950s, it's been at war with someone or other in some corner of the globe non-stop right up to the present day. This drive is now led by the weapons manufacturers themselves. It is a highly dangerous precedent. I call it war corporatism. It is the door of a new fascism being pushed open. And don't be fooled, not all fascism looks like Adolf Hitler. The reality, as we see from the Iraqi invasion, is that the presidency has been captured by the most powerful elements of this corporatism. And this ghastly molecule aims to turn the world into its very own enslaved global market, and the plan is well underway. The attack by Al-Qaeda on the World Trade Center is just one response to it. Is this a conspiracy? Quite the opposite. It is a high-profile project known as the Project for the New American Century. People like Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, Richard Pearl are the major players among politicians, right-wing thinkers, militarists and industrialists in the creation of the project. The project is a neoconservative manifesto which includes in its toolbox the unbridled use of war in clearing a path for US interests. The will to attack Iraq came entirely from this visible yet sinister group. September the 11th was merely the pretext. Bush is merely the figurehead. And so, who's next, you wonder? Iran? North Korea? France? Britain? None of us really matter to them.
Surfaced. In 2001, Barack Obama spoke with Chicago Public Radio and said this.
The Supreme Court never ventured into the issues of redistribution of wealth and sort of more basic issues of political and economic justice in the society. Maybe I'm showing my bias here as a legislator as well as a law professor, but you know, I'm not optimistic about bringing about major redistributive change through the courts. You know, the institution just isn't structured that way.
And thank God for that. Now, the Obama campaign is not happy about that tape. Spokesman Bill Burton saying, quote, "This is a fake news controversy drummed up by the all-too-common alliance of Fox News, a Drudge Report, and John McCain," unquote. Joining us from Washington with reaction, Fox News analyst Newt Gingrich has a brand new DVD out called We Have the Power, which he hosts with his wife, Callista. I'm not really sure why the Obama campaign is angry with this, because Barack Obama's made no secret of the fact that he is going to try to redistribute wealth. I asked him. He said, you know, look, The waitress not make as much as you, O'Reilly? I'm going to take from you. I'm going to give to the waitress. He hasn't made any secret of it, so why do you think they're upset?
I think they're upset because it is very clear he's talking about very large redistribution of wealth. He goes on to say a little later in that interview that you have to put together a political coalition, which he has with Acorn and others, dedicated to redistributing wealth. And I think it's the clearest example of how close he comes to almost a European socialist model of redistribution of anything we've heard, because it's not just a casual answer to Joe the plumber. It's a methodical statement that, in fact, he goes on to say that if he and two other people who agreed with him were on the Supreme Court, they'd probably change the court's decision. And he talks specifically about overruling the fundamental rules the Founding Fathers wrote into the Constitution. When you read the whole transcript, as I did this afternoon, and I went through it twice because I couldn't believe it the first time. Now, again, it was 2001. He was a state legislator. You can make all sorts of excuses, but it is a very radical left-wing fundamental change in America redistribution model that comes much closer to the University of Berkeley in California than it does to the presidency in terms of what most people expect politics to be like.
Signed into law, a billion-dollar program to change the hearts and minds of Taliban fighters through local projects and jobs. The goal, says the bill's author, is to get pro-Taliban fighters,
instead of fighting us, to join with us by putting them on a payroll to give those few dollars to tens of thousands of lower-level local Taliban people who are not there because of their religious fanaticism.
It's modeled after the Sons of Iraq program, where coalition forces and the Iraqi government hired 100,000 Iraqis to forsake the insurgency there and join with the forces of stability. But this scholar, an experienced Afghanistan elections observer, says Afghanistan is a different proposition. In Iraq, Karen von Hippel says, Sunni insurgents were motivated by their rejection of al-Qaeda brutality.
It's actually very different in Afghanistan. The Taliban are inspired by an extreme form of Islam, and they interpret it in a very violent way. So that wasn't necessarily the case in Iraq.
President Obama signed the $680 billion defense measure with this promise.
I will always do whatever it takes to keep the American people safe.
Go, come on, come on, come on! But Americans more and more question the president's Afghanistan strategy, even as Mr. Obama ponders the domestic politics and military impact of expanding the U.S. troop presence there, and as his administration is challenged about a New York Times report alleging that the brother of Afghan President Hamid Karzai has been on the CIA's payroll for years, despite suspicions that he's a major opium dealer. For the record, the CIA declined comment, and Ahmed Wali Karzai has repeatedly denied the charge. As long as Taliban fighters continue to score military successes in Afghanistan, says CSIS scholar Karen von Hippel, it will be a tough sell to sign them up to join the other side, and that's where a U.S. troop surge may have to come into play. Louise Schiavone for CNN, Washington.
What's next? I'll tell you what's next. Barack Obama is a socialist. The guy is a freaking socialist. Liberal, Democrat, these are just different words for socialist these days, okay? When Barack Obama becomes president, you know what he wants to do? He wants to take money from people who work and give it to people who don't work, okay? Because that's what a socialist does. But what Barack Obama doesn't understand is this country is a freaking capitalist society, okay? In a capitalist society, it's not the government's job to make sure you have what your neighbor has. If your neighbor has a nice house, it's not the government's job to make sure you have a nice house. If your neighbor has a nice car, it's not the government's job to make sure you have a nice car. In a capitalist society, it's the harder you work, the more money you make. The more money you make, the more stuff you get. That's how it works. Barack Obama wants to give everybody health care. Everybody's getting a free health care. Let me tell you how health care is going to work under Barack Obama. If you have health care now, you'll have the same health care, except you'll pay a little bit more for it. Why will you pay a little bit more? So Barack Obama can give free health care to people who don't work and only illegal immigrants who are running around this freaking country. Okay? Your health care program, it'll be the same, except when you're going to use it, you're never going to get to use it. The freaking system is going to be so bogged down, you'll never get near a doctor's office. You'll never get near a dentist's office. Because the people who don't work and have all this time on their hands, the illegal immigrants, every time they get a freaking bad taste in their mouth, they're going to go to the dentist's office. Every time they get a paper cut or a tummy ache, they're going to go to a freaking doctor. Let me tell you something. Under Barack Obama, if you break your leg, you better hope that an ice pack and 2 aspirin will freaking heal it. Because you're not getting near a freaking emergency room, okay? The guy is a freaking socialist. What is it you don't understand? If you want to live in a socialist society, you should have moved to freaking China, but not elect this freaking piece of garbage to be freaking president.